Listening Fill in the Blanks.
Let's start.
When you talk about places such as the Amazon, everyone always thinks about the hardwoods. Of course, these are significant, but there is a tendency to overlook the plants they are associated with, which are often bamboo species. In many ways, it is the most important plant known to man. I can't think of another plant that is used so much, and is so commercially important in so many countries. He believes that the most important first step is to get scientists into the field. We need to go out there, look at these plants and see how they survive, and then use that information to conserve them for the future.
However much we may abhor it, deception comes naturally to all living things. Birds do it by feigning injury to lead hungry predators away from nesting young. Spider crabs do it by disguise, adorning themselves with strips of kelp and other debris. They pretend to be something they are not, and so escape their enemies. Nature amply rewards successful deceivers by allowing them to survive long enough to mate and reproduce. So it may come as no surprise to learn that human beings who, according to psychologist Gerald Johnson of the University of South California, were lied to about 200 times a day, roughly one untruth every 5 minutes, often deceive for exactly the same reasons. But knowing how to catch deceit can be just as important a survival skill as knowing how to tell a lie and get away with it. A person able to spot falsehood quickly is unlikely to be swindled by an unscrupulous business associate or hoodwinked by a devious spouse. Luckily, nature provides more than enough clues to trap dissemblers in their own tangled webs if you know where to look. By closely observing facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice, practically anyone can recognize the telltale signs of lying. Researchers are even programming computers, like those used on lie detector, to get at the truth by analyzing the same physical cues available to the naked eye and ear.
A person able to spot falsehood quickly is unlikely to be swindled by an unscrupulous business associate or hoodwinked by a devious spouse. Luckily, nature provides more than enough clues to trap dissemblers in their own tangled webs, if you know where to look. By closely observing facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice, practically anyone can recognize the telltale signs of lying. Researchers are even programming computers, like those used on lie detector, to get at the truth by analyzing the same physical cues available to the naked eye and ear. With the proper training, many people can learn to reliably detect lies, says Paul Ekman, professor of psychology at the University of California, San Francisco, who has spent the past 15 years studying the secret art of deception.
The clues are written all over the face because the musculature of the face is directly connected to the areas of the brain that processes emotion. The countenance can be a window to the soul. Neurological studies even suggest that genuine emotions travel different pathways through the brain than insincere ones. If a patient paralyzed by stroke on one side of the face, for example, is asked to smile deliberately, only the mobile side of the mouth is raised. But tell that same person a funny joke, and the patient breaks into a full and spontaneous smile. Very few people, most notably actors and politicians, are able to consciously control all of their facial expressions.
Coffee was first eaten as a food, though later people in Arabia would make a drink out of boiling the beans for its narcotic effects and medicinal value. Coffee for a time was known as Arabian wine to Muslims who were banned from alcohol by Islam. It was not until after coffee had been eaten as a food product, a wine, and a medicine that it was discovered, probably by complete accident in Turkey, that by roasting the beans a delicious drink could be made. The roasted beans were first crushed and then boiled in water, creating a crude version of the beverage we enjoy today.
For the moment, those benefiting most from the spoken corpus are foreign learners. Computers allow lexicographers to search quickly through more examples of real English, said Professor Jeffrey Leach of Lancaster University. They allow dictionaries to be more accurate and give a feel for how language is being used. The spoken corpus is part of the larger British National Corpus, an initiative carried out by several groups involved in the production of language learning materials, publishers, universities and the British Library. Such lasting fame would have shocked the humble Grimms. During their lifetimes the collection sold modestly in Germany, at first only a few hundred copies a year. The early editions were not even aimed at children. The brothers initially refused to consider illustrations, and scholarly footnotes took up almost as much space as the Tauks themselves. Jacob and Wilhelm viewed themselves as patriotic folklorists, not as entertainers of children. They began their work at a time when Germany had been overrun by the French under Napoleon, who were intent on suppressing local culture. As young, workaholic scholars, single and sharing a cramped flat, the brothers Grimm undertook the fairy tale collection with the goal of serving the endangered oral tradition of Germany, capital English zone. Working at the Jottensach Biological Research Station on the banks of the Rio Napo, Beccoloni focused his attention on a group of butterflies called Etomines. These distant relatives of Britain's Camberwell beauty are abundant throughout Central and South America and the Caribbean. They are famous for their bright colors, toxic bodies and complex mimetic relationships. They can comprise up to 85% of the individuals in a mimicry ring, and their patterns are mimicked not just by butterflies, but by other insects as diverse as flies and true bugs, says Philip de Vries of the Milwaukee Public Museum Center for Biodiversity Studies. Harvesting time depends on the geographic situation, and it can vary greatly therefore according to the various producing countries. First, the ripe beans are picked from the branches. Pickers can selectively pick approximately 250 to 300 pounds of coffee cherry a day. At the end of the day, the pickers bring their heavy burlap bags to pulping mills, where the cherry coffee can be pulped or wet milled. The pulped beans then rest, covered in pure rainwater to ferment overnight. The next day the wet beans are hand distributed upon the drying floor to be sun-dried. This drying process takes from 1 to 2 weeks depending on the amount of sunny days available.
Like, share, subscribe the channel, and press the bell icon for further updates.